November 15th, 2022, the Fall Guys Twitter page made the following tweet. In it, they announced that they'll be removing rounds in a process they call vaulting. But finally, after 3 years, every core level is back in the game. In this video, I'll be doing a comprehensive breakdown of the vault, going through the seasons and updates and talking about the maps that got vaulted and unvaulted. While the concept and the vernacular of vaulting got introduced in Season 2 Satellite Scramble, aka SS2, I however firmly believe vaulting as we know it began in Season 1 Free-For-All, aka SS1. While most of these maps were in the game at the start of SS1, they'd get removed due to issues. Out of the 14 maps vaulted in SS1, 8 of them were due to flashing issues, where the blue low gravity zone would flicker really fast, which if left unchecked could potentially cause seizures. This also happened to the speed arches, which is why Speed Circuit got vaulted. I'm not sure this happened during SS1 or later, but they even vaulted variations that had low gravity zones. So this bug was game changing in the worst way possible. And if a bug could potentially send someone to the hospital, removing the map is absolutely okay on my books. This bug could be found on the Nintendo Switch port. The main Fall Guys Twitter page even name dropped the Nintendo Switch when making the tweet. Really unfortunate to see because the Switch port was new at the time, and this happened during the height of the game's resurgence. At the time, the Switch port was undercooked and just terrible. Like again, it's such a damn shame because Fall Guys, the art style of it, and the Nintendo Switch is just like a match made in heaven. The 5 remaining maps that got removed were Leading Light, which got removed on day 1 of SS1. This was due to performance issues found on the Switch port. Pipe Dream got removed on July 15th, 2022 due to issues with the trapeze. It would move super slow. However, some were able to qualify as if the trapeze was moving at normal speed for them. However, the map was still available in Extreme Show Solo and Day at the Races squads. Rock and Roll got removed on day 1 as well. It had a bug where the wrong team would spawn on the wrong color. I think there were more bugs that occurred during that time, but I couldn't find much information on them. Airtime was removed on July 15th, 2022 due to scoring issues, in which you couldn't get any points even though you were in the zone. Bubble Trouble also got removed on July 15th, and it was due to bubbles not spawning. Beanhole Zone got vaulted. That's because it was only there for the Sonic's Adventure event that was being held at the time. It wouldn't get added to the core modes until Season 3 Second Secrets, aka SS3. Listen, I made a whole video near the end of SS2 to serve as a time capsule for times like this. I'll link the video in the description, and they would vault 16 levels when the season released, or on September 15th, 2022. They would vault levels like Hoopsie Legends, Hexaring, Royal Fumble, Some Fruit, Speed Circuit, Snowball Survival, Egg Scramble, Egg Siege. They even vaulted Bounce Party, although Bounce Party did have an issue in SS1 where if you went through a hoop, you wouldn't get a point. This wouldn't happen every time, but sometimes if you went through a hoop, you wouldn't get a point. So I can see why they removed that. And a map they had to unfortunately remove on September 15th was Bubble Trouble. And this wasn't planned because Bubble Trouble actually had an SS2 variation. The reason they removed the level was because the bubbles wouldn't spawn, just like in SS1. So day 1 of SS2, they ended up vaulting 17 levels instead of 16, which was probably the original plan, but unfortunately Bubble Trouble just ended up breaking. In total, they vaulted 31 levels during SS2. Now, why they vaulted 16 levels right out of the gate is mostly unknown. Some were vaulted because during SS2, they released special versions of solos, squads, and duos called Satellite Scramble shows. These versions replaced the classic modes, and for the most part, only maps that had SS2 variations or seasonal variations were available, which severely limited the round pool. Unfortunately, the trend of levels being removed due to bugs still persisted. Bubble Trouble got added back on September 15th after being removed in SS1, but still had the bug where bubbles wouldn't spawn, and 8 days later, Airtime got removed because of scoring issues. On October 17th, 2022, they removed 5 levels, those being Big Fans, Star Chart, Team Tail Tag, Tiptoe, Tundra Run, and the low gravity ski fall variation. So I guess it's 5.5 levels, but it's 5 levels in one variation. They removed them due to, quote, issues found during testing, and End quote. They did, however, unvault 4 levels to replace the aforementioned levels. Slime Climb, Lily Leapers, Penguin Pursuit, and Penguin Pool Party will get unvaulted. A day later, on October 18th, they removed Hoverboard Heroes due to the SS2 variation being an unbalanced mess. I remember a bug where the ion thrusters would appear invisible. Space Race, a map that made its debut in SS2, got removed less than a month into the season. It got removed on October 7th, 2022 due to the low gravity zone flashing really fast, which again affected most levels that had low gravity back in SS1. Track Attack and Skyline Stumble got removed on October 21st due to visual issues. Leading Light got canned 4 days later due to performance issues. And the finale to this vaulting feast is that on the 26th of October 2022, they removed 4 levels, those being Cosmic Highway, Full Tilt, Party Promenade, and Volleyfall. The official reason given to the removal is, quote, performance issues, end quote. And on the tweet they made saying these levels would get removed is that instead of Party Promenade, they mistakenly put Skyline Stumble. It's pretty hard keeping track during the whole vaulting timeline. So let me try to simplify this. From October 17th, 2022 to October 26th, 2022, 6 days, they removed 14 levels. 14 levels. Oh my god. That is just absolutely absurd. I'm just lost for words. Alright, that's unfair. They did bring back Slime Climb and Lily Leapers, 2 fan favorite maps, and they did bring back Penguin Pool Party and Penguin Pursuit for the 3 people who enjoy those levels. But that's just like taking away the cake and giving us the sprinkles. Just like Space Race, just the fact that Cosmic Highway, a brand new map, got removed a month into its debut season. In terms of the round pool, it was the worst state in the game at the time, to the point where there were 36 rounds in solo where it normally had 61, 24 in squads, and 22 in duos where normally it could hold 70. Keeping track of what level will get vaulted and where feels like a full-time job, but the Fall Guys fandom wiki has a great list. It includes just about every instance of when a level will get removed and added back to the game. Something I actually remembered while recording this segment that's not even in my script, so I apologize if I go off tangent, is that back in the day they actually had Skibbers matchmaking in solos, and the way they handled that during SS2, and I think in SS3, but you could correct me on that, but in SS2, they basically divided you into these buckets depending on your MMR or your matchmaking rating, right? So there will be low, medium, and high. If you're in the lowest tier, you actually are granted access to 27 levels, but if you're in the medium tier, you're granted access to 32 levels, and if you're in the highest tier possible, you're granted access to all 36 levels. So let's say someone is in low, they will not be able to play Tail Tag because that's in the medium bucket, and someone who's in the medium bucket will not be able to play Slime Scraper because that is actually in the highest tier bucket possible. So if you were just someone who made their account and you wanted to play Fall Guys solos back in SS2, you would basically be able to only play 27 levels. But if your sweaty friend is really good at the game, or even like average or slightly above average, they basically are able to play more levels than you. Actually like 9 more levels. Like that, I just forgot about that. Let me know. I actually forgot. Was this whole tiered MMR level access system in SS3? I don't remember. I know they eventually stopped doing this, even though SBMM was in solo squads and duos. They stopped doing this eventually, but I just remember that. I was going through my bookmarks and I actually found this Excel sheet that someone made. I think it might have been FG Muffins. I apologize. I'm not sure who made this Excel sheet, but I'll make sure to link it in the description if I can. But this would be the season where they introduced Street Thieves, a Halloween take on Sweet Thieves. This level only appears during the Halloween season and has done so every year since its introduction. If you have the time, I urge you to watch my SS2 rant video. It goes into detail about what happened during that time. If you thought SS3 would be any better, you're sorely mistaken. Back in SS2, if a map got vaulted, you could at the very least play it in limited time modes. However, in SS3, if a map was vaulted, it would also get removed from limited time modes, basically giving you no way of playing a vaulted level until they added the Vault Show in Customs on March 3rd, 2023, which featured vaulted levels and also levels that were in the core modes. They vaulted 18 levels, and to their credit, they did unvault 12 12 levels, although 19 levels that were previously vaulted in SS2 would remain vaulted. So if I did my math correctly, that's 37 levels in the vault. Rounds will get vaulted and no official reason will be given, which could imply that nothing is wrong with the map, but they're removing it because it could potentially break, or they want to test the round to make sure it wouldn't break, but really, who knows. I also made a video about the mess that was SS3 at the time. Back then, I thought SS2 was the worst season, but just, oh boy, how wrong I was. Season 4 Creative Construction, or SS4, is where Creative Mode made its debut, and for the sake of simplicity, I'll only be talking about the Unity or Classic levels. This is the season where Mediatonic announced that they'll stop making levels in the Unity game engine and shift over to Creative Mode going forward. They would vault 12 Classic levels, and 25 levels that were vaulted in SS3 would remain in the vault. But good news is that they would bring back 12 levels. This would be the final season of Fall Guys before they moved on to updates. Summer Breeze aka 10.3 was the first update after Mediatonic announced that they will be moving on from seasons back on August 16th, 2023. In terms of unvaulting, this update was B tier. It brought back 10 levels and they didn't vault anything. And while personally I'm not a fan of most of the levels they chose to bring back, like Hoverboard Heroes, Royal Fumble, and Perfect Match, to name a few, any unvaults is great in my book. They added Egg Scramble to duos, the first team game to get added back to duos. I remember they removed team games from duos during SS1, and while they did bring them back, they vaulted them all again during Season 4 Creative Construction, or SS4. But yeah, this would be the start of them bringing back team games to duos. Personally, I'm not a fan of team games as I prefer to play solo, but they would add variety and can be plain fun if you're playing with friends. 27 maps that were vaulted in SS3 were still in the vault. Oh yeah, fun fact, this would be the first update, like season or just postseason update, to have 0 vaults. This being the game's first postseason update, they had to come out with a bang, and they did just that. Well, in terms of unvaulting, I mean. Fall Force aka 10.4 released on September 27th, 2023. Since it was pretty close to Halloween, they chose to bring back Street Thieves and 5 other levels. Although Tiptoe Finale would only appear in duos due to a bug found in the squads version specifically. Players were not able to complete the map in squads since every tile in the last 4 rows were fake. However, it was working perfectly fine in duos, so they just left it there. They did have to vault X Scramble because of, quote, an identifiable exploitable bug, end quote, which is pretty vague. According to the wiki, people were able to get infinite points in both Egg Scramble and Egg Siege by, quote, repeatedly grabbing and letting go of an egg by the corner of a nest, end quote. Just funny how they added the first team game to duos an update ago but had to remove it. That's just a classic Mediatonic moment, you know? 23 classic rounds that were vaulted in 10.3 were still in the vault. Tool Up aka 10.5 has one of my favorite unvaults, that being Slime Scraper, which is my favorite map in the entire game. They unvaulted 5 other maps and thankfully no vaulting. And with this update, they added the trios variant of Tiptoe Finale into squads. Great news for duo team lovers. Penguin Pursuit and Volleyfall got added back to duos. 17 maps vaulted in 10.4 were still in the vault. In terms of vaulting, nothing really major to report here. We unfortunately got no unvaults, and Seesaw got vaulted due to issues with the Seesaw. What's strange is that while Hoopsie Daisy is still vaulted in the core modes, those being solos, squads, and duos, it could now be found in limited time modes. 17 maps vaulted in 10.5 still remained in the vault. Another uneventful update in terms of the vault because nothing really happened. They just removed the finale version of Jinxed, but you could still get the regular version in squads, but not in duos. Since nothing got unvaulted, the total number of maps vaulted in 10.6 that is still in the vault is 18. This will be the update where Bean Hill Zone will get removed from the game entirely. It's not even in the game files. They removed this on March 5th, 2024, a few days into the survival update, aka 10.8. We don't know the actual reason why they did this. The popular theory is that the contract between Sega and Mediatonic expired and either Sonic or Mediatonic chose not to renew it. Another theory is that Sega was developing their own Fall Guys clone, and that eventually ended up being true, and that game is called Sonic Rumble. Puzzle Path will get vaulted as well since Nintendo Switch players weren't able to go through the wormholes. 18 maps vaulted in 10.7 still remained in the vault. Fall Forever aka 10.9 was the update where they retired vaulting and introduced refreshes, where they would occasionally change up the maps available in knockout, squads, and duos. If you're wondering what happened to solos, it actually got removed for some reason. So it was knockout, squads, and duos. Eventually, after enough backlash, they added back solos. Now that was a whole thing, and I covered the first 7 days of the first week of Fall Forever in this video. They went so far with this retirement of the vault that they removed the vault show that could be found in customs. I'll urge you to read the knockout/rotation pages found on the Fall Guys fandom wiki, since it goes into great detail. When 10.9 first came out, it only had knockout, squads, and duos, and all three had the same round pool, like the exact same round pool. And all three of them had 40 levels, 17 of them were classic or unity levels, and 23 were creative mode levels. Fun fact, back when knockout first released, all the creative mode levels were made by the community. In rotation 2, they added one more round, making the total count 41. Knockout had 18 classic unity levels and 23 creative mode maps. Rotation 3, it had 25 classic levels and 16 creative mode levels. You know what I'll do? I'll show you all three rotations back to back because they changed it quite a bit. So, what are you eating right now? In my opinion, a sort of overlooked hallmark of a good content creator or an entertainer is, are you able to eat while watching their videos? If you're eating while watching this video right now, I am honored. Thank you. Now, back to the main video. They brought back Hoopsie Daisy on May 27th, 2024, when previously it could only be played in Customs and Classic Knockout, but by the second rotation it became a team game again, and it stayed that way from the third rotation onwards. Block Party, Lost Temple, Party Promenade, Star Chart, and Wall Guys all got removed due to the jump physics change. You basically jump higher, which broke these maps in some ways as they were designed with the previous physics in mind. Either Minotonic didn't playtest these levels when changing the jump physics, or they did and didn't care enough about it and just shipped it out. I honestly have no idea what's worse. These changes were clearly done for creative mode, as the bean is overall more stronger and can jump higher, which will be great for playing maps found in the brand new Explore mode, for example. What's funny about Lost Temple is that people were able to get above the map and land on top and just start walking on what I can assume is the invisible roof or something. I'm not exactly sure what the game dev term is, but they're actually able to just go above the entire map and just cheat their way to victory basically. It's crazy to see. Even though it got removed from the core modes, you could still play Lost Temple and Knockout for some reason. Star Chart was definitely not designed with the physics change in mind, because you can just avoid the bridge altogether and jump dive to the button island. June 2024 update aka 11.0 is great for people who love team games because they re-added 4 of them, those being Egg Scramble, Hoarders, Power Trip, and Rock and Roll. Not only that, but they added 5 team games into duos. The last 4 updates were pretty bad in terms of unvaulting, especially Fall Forever. However, with this update going forward, we started seeing a ton more maps get unvaulted, especially long forgotten ones. July 2024 update aka 11.1 is when they brought back Hyperdrive Heroes and Space Race, baby. Oh yeah, they also released Fall Guys on mobile, but who cares about that? Space Race, woo! And while Hyperdrive Heroes and Space Race would have been enough, honestly, they unvaulted a bunch more levels. On July 23rd, 2024, they unvaulted Egg Siege, Night Fever, Ski Fall, Speed Circuit. Then on August 1st, they brought back Hyperdrive Heroes and Space Race, and they added Lost Temple to the classic games again. Then the next day, on August 2nd, 2024, they added Fruit Shoot and Hoverboard Heroes to the other classic modes, like duos and squads. 14 days later, or 2 weeks later, they re-added Roll On. However, unfortunately, on the same day, they had to remove Party Promenade and Pipe Dream. This was the update when I felt like, yeah, I could see all the Unity maps back in the game one day. Seeing Hyperdrive Heroes back was incredible, and they even added the map to squads. And it's also pretty nice seeing Hoverboard Heroes getting added to squads and duos for the first time. I remember during SS2, someone actually made this whole graphic about levels that could get added to squads and duos but are not in those modes, and Hoverboard Heroes was one of them. So after all these years, that person finally got their wish. Hoverboard Heroes now in squads and duos. And going forward, they would add these sort of solo exclusive levels levels into squads and duos, they would also unvault Speed Circuit. Seeing that and Space Race in the game again, in the core modes I mean, and in my opinion, in terms of unvaulting, this might be the best update. I could be wrong, but this is the first postseason update to add levels after the first day, because we would usually get levels whenever an update first drops, but nothing after that. But Space Race and Hyperdrive Heroes got added back on August 1st, 2024, when 11.1 released on July 23rd. Oh yeah, they also unvaulted the Vault Show, so that's cool I guess. Scrapyard Stumble aka 11.2 was a phenomenal update. However, it only brought back one classic level, that being Bubble Trouble, which is huge, don't get me wrong, because Bubble Trouble was vaulted in SS1. They did bring it back on September 15th, 2022, but they vaulted it the same day. And now they brought back the level on September 3rd, 2024. So the level was gone for nearly 2 years, so it being brought back is just huge. The following 2024 update rolls around and they added back Treat Thieves, which most players know by now is when the map comes back and it then gets removed until September-October rolls around and it'll be back. No shocker there. In the November 2024 update, they removed Treat Thieves, which makes sense. You know, I found it strange how they brought back Seesaw during the winter update, but not Freezy Peak. You know, your winter map. Funny enough, they added back Freezy Peak in the next update. Like, you could have just swapped the two. And who knows, this could have been a practical joke from Miatonic, and it wouldn't actually surprise me if it was one. Because the Ranked Knockout update released on April 1st. April 1st is when they chose to release the ranked mode, so Miatonic do clearly have a sense of humor. But anyways, during the Ranked Knockout update, they added back Bounce Party after 929 days, or 2 years and 6 months. It got vaulted at the start of SS2 or on September 15th, 2022, and it came back on April 1st, 2025. Fun fact, the squads and duos version of Bounce Party also made its debut in this update. Before, it was only exclusive to solos. And did I mention they released the ranked mode during April Fools? A Miatonic moment indeed. If you thought them adding back Bounce Party was huge, this unvault makes Bounce Party look small by comparison. After 999 days of being in the vault, they added back Cosmic Highway. This level got removed 41 days into its debut season, that being Season 2 Satellite Scramble, due to performance issues. Fun fact, this level was in the Vault Show but got removed from there sometime in March 2023 due to some PlayStation 5 players being unable to complete the map due to there being no platforms to traverse across, just pendulum. You legit had no way of playing the map, and this went on for years. Eventually, in Fall Forever aka 10.9, they removed it from the game files entirely. Apparently, according to people on social media, they fixed the map in the Power Party aka 10.6 update, but it would continue to have issues after that. Depending on the severity of these issues, they could have unvaulted the map ages ago. I remember when I used to live stream that people in my chat were saying they're going to unvault the map on the 999 day mark, and I thought that was a bit absurd, but lo and behold, they did just that. We'll admit, it is a bit funny now, but it did irk me that they held on to it for so long just for a funny moment, but hey, it's back now. Oh yeah, they finally fixed Star Chart and added that back on July 25th, 2025, along with Cosmic Highway. However, the update released 2 months prior on May 27th, and with it, they unvaulted Hoop Shoot. So basically, they unvaulted Hoop Shoot first, then Star Chart and Cosmic Highway. With majority of the updates, we'd usually get some form of action, whether it be unvaulting or vaulting, but that's usually reserved for levels. However, this update would unvault variations, 31 to be exact, at least according to the Fall Guys fandom wiki. What's interesting is that 6 of these variations were only added to Knockout. All of them contain low gravity. We even got 3 variations that were never before seen. They even added variations that were exclusive to LTM, such as Blast Ball Bangers and Hard Mode, to the core modes. Big Shots is such a boring map, but the Blast Ball Bangers variant made that map pretty fun and chaotic. Thin Ice with Blast Balls is just super chaotic and just turns it into a shooting contest for me. So happy to see these variations in the game. But nah, Split Low Gravity Roll-Off is a variation I forgot existed, and it was just such a joy to see for the first time. These variations are mostly little tweaks like less flippers or less gloves, so most won't notice them, but some variations can change up the level in big ways. With the vault being close to empty, bringing back variations and adding them to the core modes will be the next step. They did vault the no spin variation of the Swiveler. I've seen people think that this variation is actually a bug, but no, it was a variant. However, this wouldn't be an update where they didn't bring back any maps, because on August 18th, 2025, they brought back Party Promenade and Pipe Dream, along with announcing Mastery Ranked Cycles and Extreme Solos Ranked. With this update, if you discount Bean Hill Zone and Treat Thieves, we still have 4 classic maps in the vault. At the time of me making this video, this is the most recent full update, although Mediatonic have been doing these sub-updates I suppose, and I'll touch up on those when we get there. But as for the main update, when they released it on September 16th, 2025, they unvaulted 45 variations, most of them being these satellite scramble variations that were only playable during SS2. I don't think they even added those variations to the vault show if I recall correctly. 5 of the variations added in the last update are now in all the core modes, which is great because I thought they would keep them knockout exclusive to entice more people to play that mode, but it could have been to make sure they aren't bugged upon being added to the core modes. Or maybe they did like a whole timed exclusive scenario where they put these sort of sought after super rare variations to knock out the mode they want people to play the most, and then they were like, okay, you know what, let's add these to the core modes now. But again, that's just my speculation theory, not fact at all. They did vault the Freezy Peak Gravity Spinner variant, which is unfortunate. If you thought the variation unvaulting was over, guess again, because on November 4th, they unvaulted 28 more variations, and one of them is a warped variant, that being Warped Frantic Factory. And one of my big regrets in this game is not playing more of the warped variations when they released them back in SS2. I hope they add the rest of the wormhole variations to the core modes. And something I didn't notice at first is that they brought back and added the Yeet Parade version of Hit Parade into the game. At the moment, it's only a knockout, so only time will tell if they add it to the classic modes or not. But it'd be great to see them add more LTM exclusive variations into the core modes. At the time of making this video, there's 3 of these sub-updates, and in terms of vaulting, I only need to talk about the first and last one. The first one, dubbed Arctic Adventures, released on November 11th, 2025, and this sub-update essentially ended the vault's reign. Well, for the most part, cause Sweet Thieves and Treat Thieves are in the vault, and Bean Hill Zone, but Bean Hill Zone doesn't really count anymore because it's not in the game. But regardless, they unvaulted Block Party, Puzzle Path, and Wall Guys, meaning all the core maps are now in the game. It took around 3 years, but the game feels whole again. Bean Hill Zone unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, and that's due to contracts expiring, so I don't count that as a level. And the Invisibean levels were always LTM exclusive and more classified as modes. And plus, Street Thieves does come back during the month of October, so I basically don't count that either. And that just leaves Sweet Thieves, which finally got unvaulted and added to the game selector on March 3rd, 2026. However, it first got added to customs on February 27th, 2026. Fun fact, before this, Sweet Thieves was only playable during the year of 2022, as in like it was available only in the game selector during the year 2022. I believe it was also in customs well after that, but with Puzzle Path, they had to vault a ton of its variations, and we aren't sure why. We did get one of them, and we only have one Puzzle Path variation in the game. And with Wall Guys, due to the jump physics change, making this map a cakewalk, because of the Wall Guys, the whole point was you're supposed to scale and climb up these walls, but with the jump physics, it sort of makes that redundant. They had to vault 3 of the variations, and in return we got 2 of them unvaulted. Back in the day, I made a video about how vaulting was killing Fall Guys, and I still stand by that, because a game like Fall Guys relies on its round pool and isn't like Fortnite or any other traditional battle royale, where it's one giant map with points of interest and like different guns that can just change the way you play the game. The round pool is so important. It's one of the first things I talk about during my update breakdowns or first 7 days videos. And while the game is in a weird state, I will not deny that, Mediatonic have gone to great lengths in bringing back these classic maps over the years that we, the community, have fell in love with. Every map is someone's favorite. The next step would be to unvault variations, especially the wormhole variants, and add them to the core modes. Heck, I'd love to see an LTM containing wormhole maps. Either way, it's great seeing all the classic Unity made levels back in the game. Let's hope they don't go back in the vault, which wouldn't surprise me because it's Mediatonic, but let's try not to think about that. Special thank you to our Max Tour aka $5 members, Jumper Runnin', The Editor, and Scrawny Doggy for your support as always.